Blog Talk Radio. Greetings and welcome to the Sales Sense Reality Talk Show with your host, Mike Krause. Mike has sold over $100 million in sales and offers Fortune 500 strategies, tactics, and tools to sales professionals and business leaders. He created this show with one thing in mind, for sales professionals to share their secrets with each other. Join us every Wednesday at 12 to 12:30 Eastern Time, or sign up for updates on Mike's mailing list at salessensesolutions.com. Mike appreciates you listening and wishes you good luck on your next sales call.
Well, welcome. It's Mike Krause with the Sales Sense Reality Talk Show. I'm very excited to have Dr. Tom Anastasi here with us this afternoon, and he's written a new book called The Successful Entrepreneur. This book is a must for entrepreneurs who have an ongoing venture or are thinking of starting one. It covers planning for 5 years, getting startup and growth capital, making realistic predictions, selling and sales management, which we'll concentrate on, pricing your products and services, promotions on a shoestring, which we all know how that is, and why entrepreneurs is still the American dream. Tom Anastasi is a best-selling author whose 4 books have been sold around the world, with over 20 years teaching at Boston University School of Management, Harvard School of Public Health, teaching leadership, and an MBA director at Daniel Webster College. Professor Anastasi has taught thousands of people business and has appeared on over 100 radio shows and televisions and lectured around many corporations around the country. So, without further ado, Tom, how are you this afternoon?
Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm excited because, an entrepreneur, that's a passion of all of us, I think. We always have that entrepreneur in us, and I'm excited to learn about how your book can help entrepreneurs and sales professionals, go out there and make that leap of faith, because we all know that's what it takes, is that leap of faith and trusting yourself. Can you tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself, Tom?
Sure. I did sales and marketing for many years before getting into the glorious life of academia. And so I know what it was like to make your monthly numbers, to make your quarterly numbers. And as a sales manager, I had several salespeople working for me. So I knew how to motivate people. And so I think that's really made me a much better professor, actually doing it for so long, because sales isn't easy. I tell people all the time that sales is one of the most difficult jobs there is, and there's a lot of repetition to it, and it's a lot of hard work. And to people who are non-sales people, they say, "Oh my gosh, getting the order is easy." But the people who say that have actually never sold for a living.
Well, you hit the nail on the head there, because that's the ivory tower syndrome. How can't you just go out there and sign $1 million this afternoon? And managing the sales process and having people go through it is a full-time job, and you have to deal with what I refer to as a lot of human dynamics. There's a lot of people involved in a lot of deals, and we have to satisfy each person's needs along the way and almost tiptoe through the sales process. What, in your experience when you're managing people, what are some of the attributes that made that great salesperson? Everyone's always looking for that silver bullet when you're in the recruiting process. What are some of the attributes that you have found in your experience that made a great salesperson?
Well, entrepreneurs ask me that all the time, and I say, I've never sold anything in my life. And then they quickly find out that they're spending a huge percentage of their day selling, and they're worried about it. And sales training is absolutely a wonderful thing to do. It makes the best salespeople better, and it makes the superstars really understand the things they're doing right. And, professional baseball players have hitting coaches, and they're better at what they do than anyone. So salespeople can benefit from sales training. But, when I worked for a consulting firm, I used to go in to companies that were struggling, and I had to determine, well, is it a product problem? Is it a pricing problem? Is it a commission problem? Is it a motivation problem, a knowledge problem? And one of the things I found out was that when we looked at large numbers of salespeople, the salespeople that did the best, when we marked down every single thing they did all day, were the ones that made more calls. So that is your biggest predictor of success, It's the people that have 60 customer contacts a day are going to sell roughly twice as much as those who have 30 customer contacts a day. And it's just hard work, and they get very savvy at keeping conversations short enough while still keeping rapport, while getting very efficient when they're on the road as far as seeing as many places as they can, and really working the phones, working email, and that. The other thing that we found was that they have great product knowledge, and they looked at their job not really as someone trying to sell someone they didn't need, but what they did was try to look at the customer as a client. So it's as if the customer was paying them for their advice, independent of margin, independent of anything else. It's the salespeople who were customer-focused, like a laser beam. Those are the ones that people gravitated toward. They're the problem solvers. They're the ones that can say, okay, well, the best thing for you is product B. As far as my commission's concerned, it's product A. I'm going to recommend product B because long-term that's going to be by far the best for me.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of people that take shortcuts in sales, and there are no shortcuts to success, as we all know. To do it right and to do it consistently and drive that activity really takes a special kind of person. I want to back up to what you said, because that struck a chord with me, is with regards to, entrepreneurs and feeling like, I'm not a salesperson or I'm not a salesperson. Then all of a sudden they realize, hang on, I am a salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like a light bulb goes off in their head, and I always boil it down to we're always in sales. We're always trying to persuade or walk people through. What are some steps that an entrepreneur can start to realize that, hey, my most important job is business acquisition and going out there and selling my products or services? What can they do?
Whether it's a Fortune 500 company or whether it's a husband and wife owning a business or a sole proprietorship or someone that maybe has 10 or 15 employees, everybody supports the sales staff. The sales staff is the only one that brings in revenue. Everybody else is overhead. And as soon as you realize that, it's, oh my gosh, that's right. And so entrepreneurs are scared to death because, oh my gosh, I've never sold before, and I've read some books, I've been to some classes, but I tell them, you know what? If you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to be honest with your customers, everything else will fall into place. I mean, think about how many times there's been somebody that we have dealt with when we're the customer, and they're obviously not a professional salesperson, but they just know their product really well, and they're pleasant to deal with, and they're really looking out for us. But we gravitate toward those people. And by the way, salespeople are the biggest suckers for another good salesperson when we're consumers. And so what we do is we sit there and say, yeah, that person's a good, trustworthy person who's selling something at a fair price that I need. And that's it. That's the basics. Once you get into things like corporate sales and negotiating multi-million-dollar contracts, I mean, there are some different skills that you're going to need, but most people aren't going to be at that point for a while in their business.
Absolutely. We are the easiest sale. I don't want to say I'll buy anything, but on the other hand, if the sales professional shows up on time and is a product or service, I rarely give pushback. We're very easy to understand because we know that it's hard out there to be in sales and that I just want my product or service handled. And I think that's what the average consumer wants. They want to know that they can put their trust and faith in you, and you're going to deliver on the promises in our conversation. That's as simple as it can get. Just deliver on what you said, and you'll be a success.
Well, the other issue is back orders, which which we often don't have control over. And again, it's just being honest with the customer and letting them know every step of the way. Customers understand that back orders happen, but they get very frustrated when they haven't heard from people for a while. So if you just sit there, I mean, sometimes it's daily or twice daily, letting people know how things are going. There was one of my colleagues has a business and had a large order come in, and he was waiting for the delivery from China, and it got delayed. And it got delayed by 2 or 3 weeks. And he made sure that he was on the phone every day, constantly gave them updates, and everybody was frustrated, but they understood. And they didn't cut him off, and they kept doing business with him because they realized, okay, we understand that these things happen, and you didn't just leave us in the lurch. And this was particularly difficult for that customer because the component he was selling was a component in a product that they had a customer for who was calling them. So you can see sometimes there's a big chain when you have some manufacturing supply issues.
Absolutely. It's almost like sometimes I deal with salespeople that they're so excited to get the deal, and then there'll be a little hiccup. There's always going to be a hiccup. I mean, very rare does it go through perfectly. And then they can't handle that hiccup, and instead of confronting the issue, they hide. And that just bothers your customer to no end. If you, just like you mentioned, Tom, if you keep them informed along the process, you're just building that relationship, you're building the trust. And like you mentioned, the average consumer knows it's very hard to get things done in a perfect world. And as long as you're educating them along the way, you're just going to win a client for life. So that was a good story to share.
Yeah, and the thing is that and this is where experience comes in. Inexperienced salespeople will often tell the customer everything's going to be perfect, it's going to move like clockwork, and that's fully their expectation, but they tend to be very optimistic. You know, people have been around the block a few times, realize that doesn't happen, and so they're going to set the customer's expectations right up front and say, well, you know, we often have issues, and sometimes we're going to try everything we can to get it in by the 1st of May, but just let you know that sometimes, you know, there is a delay, and that way when that delay happens, people are expecting it. Customers will not throw you out the door if you're being honest with them.
That's true. There's no question about that. You know, with the change in the economy, and we're all seeing gas prices go up to over $4, and, you know, it seems like every time pricing's going up, jumping into kind of your book, is this a good time to jump out there and start a business? I'm sure that's a question that a lot of people are on the fence. Is this a good time, Tom?
This is a great time to start a business. Depends on the type of business, just to put this into the right terms. Consumer businesses, for instance, things like a spa, probably not the great time to start a business because you're asking people to spend discretionary income. And when the price of gasoline goes up, people tend to hunker down with their discretionary income, kind of, you know, weathering the storm a little bit. But for necessities, for things that people need, and for services that are not very expensive, this is a great time to start a business, especially for people who are unemployed. The unemployment rate is still very high. And the reason for that is that when most people start a business, they just jump into it and hope that it's going to be a success. That's not a real good way to start things. Instead, what you need to do is take a little bit of time, and I show people how to do that. I've got all the worksheets for free on my website, tomanastasi.com. Right in the back of the Successful Entrepreneur, there's a whole bunch of websites, and everything's there. So I show people how to do it. And what they need to do is take a little bit of time, maybe 10 to 12 hours, and really plan the business. And one of the things that people find is that when they do this, the business idea they thought they had sometimes doesn't work. I mean, either there's not a market for it, or the timing isn't right, or it's going to cost too much money to start because they really looked at it. And I know it's depressing, but it's better to know that before than after. But if you repeat the process 4 or 5 times, you'll say, oh my gosh, I have something that is going to have manageable startup costs. It's going to have a market that works. And what you'll find is that at that point, you'll own the business business won't own you. And I know it's boring planning, taking 30, 40 hours to really plan your business, but you're going to be working at it for thousands of hours. When I was an SBDC consultant, and I still do a lot of work with the SBDC and SCORE, when people come in with business ideas, I try to convince them not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if they can survive my asking them all the tough questions, then they've got a great business. But I don't want them to be risking their house. I don't want them to be wasting money. And if you just sit and plan for a little bit, you'll find this is a great time to start a business. Though, the only caveat is that you may not be starting the business you originally thought. You may have to go to your third or fourth idea.
Absolutely. It's kind of like artwork. You may be in love with your piece of art, and you kind of just set it out there, and everyone's going to love this. Everyone's going to love this. Everyone's going to buy it. And of course, around the entrepreneur cycle is you're supported by your friends and family, which probably are not going to tell you the truth. Mm-hmm. They're not going to say they're going to say, "Oh wow, that's a great idea, Tom. Let's go for it. Go for it. Go for it." And then you get all this false hope until you meet an outside consultant like yourself or myself, and then all of a sudden you get hard questions back, and you didn't do your plan, you didn't do this, and just because you have the idea, that is not even close to the execution and capital costs of starting your own business.
Right, and that's why, well, let me give you an example of how you solved that problem. We had someone come to me and had a new idea for a new type of ice cream maker, and it could pretty much make any ice cream you want on demand. And it would have a memory database in there to remember your concoction. And it sounded pretty cool, but the problem is that it took about 5 minutes to make the ice cream. So what happens is if you went there with, wife and 2 kids, it's going to take 20 minutes to get people served. It's going to cost $4 or $5. And then when we did some focus groups, we did 3 focus groups, and we found that, well, everybody likes their local ice cream place, and they've got 60 flavors. Right. So I don't need 61 flavors. Mm-hmm. And so, but we didn't pitch them on that particular idea because people are nice. They're going to say, yeah, I like it. What we did was we pitched them on that idea and then 4 fake ideas. And then say, okay, what do you think of all these 5 ideas? And that way, when it got to the ice cream one, he was hearing what people really thought about the idea. And there just is not a market for it. And so he was ready to take an equity line out on his house and risk his house on his venture. So I'll just put it this way, the $21 he spent on my book, best investment he ever made. That's
right. It's funny, and we live in a world of information, and there's great experts like yourself out there that write books. And if to have your service and go through a personal relationship for $21, you can actually have a consultant in your back pocket to help you through and save you tens of thousands of dollars and possibly even losing your house. Because people do go down that dream path of like, I'm going to be the next Don Trump or the next big Subway or whatever industry they're going to be in, and unfortunately reality rolls in real quick. And that goes back to actually one question is, what cash reserve should someone have when they're embarking on this incredible journey to be an entrepreneur?
It's different for every business. And one of the planning steps that I talk about, and by the way, in The Successful Entrepreneur, I've got many, many, many real-life examples. This is all based on lectures that I've done in graduate business classes, and it's also based on real companies I've dealt with all over the country. And so people are getting 20 years of my experience for $21, which is a really good deal. But one of the things that I tell people is this: go and find 3 or 4 other businesses, okay, similar to the one you want to start. And on my website, I have a worksheet there. You can download it for free, and it's Excel, so it does all the math for you. Now, if you ask them, hey, can I see your financial statements, your cash flow statement, your income statement, your balance sheet? I mean, they're going to, after they stop laughing, they're going to throw you out. Mm-hmm. But if you say, hey, The first year, how much revenue could I expect? And what do you think my expenses are going to be? How about my second and third year? How much money do you think I should have on hand? What are my startup costs going to be? If you ask 3 or 4 people that, you're going to get some very valuable data and actually surprisingly accurate data. Because if I say, hey, can I see your income statement from last year? You're not going to like me. But if I said, hey, I'm starting this business, what do you think I could expect in revenues after 4 or 5 years? They're pretty much going to tell you what their revenues were last year. And we have to think like a bean counter, and we have to think, okay, let's not overestimate revenue and underestimate expenses. We're going to look at that number. And it's when you can sit there and say, yeah, I can live with that number and pay my mortgage or my rent and buy food and pay my electric bill. This works because, remember, you have to pay your personal expenses too. And so when you do that, you'll find. So, for instance, for a printing shop, it might be $20,000 of cash on hand. For an ice cream place, it might be $10,000. For a manufacturer and supplier, they may need $250,000 on hand. So it really is very different depending on your inventory needs and your the price of the products you sell.
Absolutely. But the important part is to have that cash around. Like we all know, cash is king. Because all of a sudden it's just like dealing with a bank. You have money now, and they want to give you money. But once you don't have any money, you're not going to get any more. So I always had that rule of get those lines of credit or get whatever you can up front, because when you, quote-unquote, go into trouble, you will have some issues getting another line of credit. So it's better to start with a plan. And like Tom is mentioning, a plan. When we talk about planning, because that's kind of like one of those words that no one wants to do. Everyone just wants to jump into the fun. Let's just go out there and see what we can do and the fun. But what really defines a successful business plan, and how useful are these things?
They're very useful if they're based on meaningful data. I got to tell you, very few that I saw working with the SBDC and SCORE were based on meaningful data.
Yes.
Most people just kind of think of numbers off the top of their head, and that's not a good way to run a railroad or any other business. What you've got to do, again, talk to other places. You can go to any library or any college library, even public library, will have access to business databases that will actually give you financials of many businesses. And so you can really see what you're up against. Talk to other people in the industry. Talk to customers. Do some research. I mean, I show people how to do all these things. It's not that difficult. I mean, companies pay me obscene amounts of money to do marketing research for them, and if you just believe that the calculations in Microsoft Excel are correct, then just download the templates, the very same ones I use when I work with companies. And then now it's based on very meaningful numbers, and as a side note, investors are going to be much more receptive to it because it's also based on much more meaningful data. It doesn't take long. And what you'll find is that first year is going to be much less stressful, and years 2 and 3 will be way more fun if you have all the cash reserves you need, the customers you need, and everything like that. Now, something you mentioned before, that undercapitalization is a major problem. That happens for thriving businesses as well as for struggling businesses.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that people need to do once business starts going and they're really growing is take a look at their cash flow over the next maybe 2 or 3 years, because what can happen is that the business is thriving, it's growing, it's going wonderfully, and they don't realize that they're bleeding to death. And unfortunately, sometimes they don't realize it until it's too late, because these type of financial issues can really creep up on someone. So that's why you have to plan for it, months in advance, because owning a business should be fun. The biggest reason that people own businesses is the same thing I hear from salespeople all the time. It's the relationships they have with their customers. That's the thing that gives them the most joy. And salespeople say that, entrepreneurs say that, and remember, owning a business is wonderful, but it's also work, and you're going to have to be in a position to do jobs that you've never done before. So finance, accounting, sales management, all those are going to be you, because when you're first starting, most people just can't pay to have everybody do those jobs for them.
Absolutely. You have to wear many hats, and could be taking out the garbage one day, and then it could be, doing your taxes the next. So we're running a little bit low on time. It goes by fast when you're having fun. But the successful entrepreneur, the focus here, and I love that you've done a detailed roadmap for people, because that's what people need. They need a journey, they need a destination, they need a starting point and an ending point. And just to highlight, you have a startup section, being the boss section, sales and marketing section, and years 2 through 5. Can you walk through the listeners the value, and like you just mentioned a few times, for $21 is priceless advice in my mind. If you can pick up one thing out of the entire book, it's worth it in gold. Can you walk the listeners through a little bit more about what they're going to gain from the successful entrepreneur?
Sure. So first of all, we talk about starting up and all the things you have to think about. And then the reason I have the section on being the boss is that most people who are entrepreneurs have been employees all their life, and they've never had anybody work for them. So there's a section on employment laws that you have to know, because it's not common sense. It's on hiring people, how to weed through and find the best people. I mean, you want the best people out there representing your dream. Motivation and leadership, these things are all absolutely critical for any person to know, because you cannot outpay some of your established competitors. You just can't do that at the beginning. And they're going to have these great benefit plans, and they're going to have higher salaries, but you're going to give them great quality of life. And that is a wonderful trade-off, quality of life for income. So you're going to do that. And if you do that, you don't need to pay the big bucks to get the very best people. And then I talk about sales and sales management, because that's what most entrepreneurs are going to be spending the greatest part of their day doing, and typically will have the least amount of experience with. If you get a savvy salesperson starting a business, I mean, they are so far ahead of the curve as far as knowing what to do, and that's wonderful, but you always don't get that. And then years 2 through 5, I really focus on the fact that you have an asset. A successful business is an asset just as much as a truck or a car or the signage that you have, because you've got a customer base that knows you and loves you. You've got stable financials, so all of a sudden banks and lenders and investors are going to look at you much more favorably. And if you can get to year 5 is the magic year. If you can get to year 5, then what happens is that you're going to be on cruise control. And that's just a wonderful, wonderful place to be. And so the problem is most people plan for about a year and a half, figure that everything will take care of itself after that. Don't do that. Plan for year 5 right off the start, and you'll find that you'll own the business, and it won't be a distraction or a negative in your life.
Absolutely. And I think the key there is the word 5 and 5 years, because I think a lot of people in the beginning stages, like all of us are probably guilty of, think it's going to be the next thing since sliced bread, and it's going to be an overnight success. And it's really important, like Tom has mentioned, to really plan each year and put that 5 years in, because it takes more than what the average person thinks it's going to take. There's no question about that. Definitely encourage everyone to go out. The Successful Entrepreneur by Tom. It's a great book. It breaks down from step 1 to the end of 5 years, and it's a great read. Tom, how can people get a hold of you? And we're going to close it down with that.
Sure. Amazon.com, of course. GlenbridgePublishing.com, a wonderful publisher. And my website, tomanastasi.com.
Okay. Well, Tom, thanks for taking the time out of your day to share with my listeners of the value of entrepreneurship and going out there with a plan. And you can be successful. You need to just to plan it, read, and knowledge is power, as we all know. We have a lot of resources out there, and I encourage you to purchase Tom's book to make that leap of faith and walk through the process that Tom has clearly outlined in his book, The Successful Entrepreneur. Thanks for listening today, and wish everyone good luck on your next sales call. And thanks, Tom, for taking time out of your busy day.
Oh, my pleasure. It was fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Enjoy. Bye now.